Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Michael. I'm going to be your, I'm going to be presenting the webinar this afternoon. I'm joined by Jackie, who'll be helping out manning the questions this afternoon. I'm not expecting you to have that many, but if you do, keep them coming, keep her busy. Maybe joined by some of my other colleagues as well once we get started. Now, you are in listen-only mode during the session today. It just means you don't need a microphone, but if you do have one and you enable it, well, you're just going to be muted automatically. You can't unmute yourself during the session. So you can't ask questions verbally, but you will be able to type them in. And myself and Jackie will just try and pick those up as we go through the session today. So if you can't see the questions panel currently, then on your toolbar down the right-hand side, you'll have a little icon on your toolbar. Looks like a speech bubble containing a question mark. If you give it a click, you get a little box in the bottom right-hand corner. You can start typing. So any comments or questions you have, anything you're not sure of, obviously we will prioritize those questions relating to what we're talking about, because we generally get questions about anything and everything. But today we want to concentrate on setting up and managing users in Sage 50 Cloud Accounts, which is a fairly straightforward topic, that one. So I'm not expecting it to last the full 30 minutes. Let's have a look at what we're going to be covering though. So I'm going to set up, first of all, talk a little bit about why you would set up users. We'll then run through a quick demonstration of how to set them up and what to watch out for, and a couple of tips along the way as well. Once we're finished the demos, again, I'm not expecting it to take the full 30 minutes today. So we'll explain a little about the additional learning opportunities that you've got available, such as additional webinars, live sessions and recordings. Sage University, I'll tell you a little bit about that one. We'll hang around for Q&A as well, but because I'm not expecting it to last for the full half hour, what I've done is between myself and Jackie, we've come up with a bonus feature. So just picked at random this one. We're going to look at bank recurring items today. So if you want to hang around for that one, maybe you want to have a go of that and just have a look at the feature within your software as we go, you'd be more than welcome. Maggie, you're asking about a handout. I don't have one for today's session because it's such a simple topic in today's session. And there is loads of information as usual within the help center should you need it, but I don't honestly think you will. So I haven't got a handout for this specific session. But we'll get started. As usual, we will be recording this session. So if you need a bit of a recap on anything we do cover, or you want to share it with a colleague or anything like that, just watch out for your follow-up email. By the time you get the follow-up email, hopefully the recording will be available. If it isn't, when you get that email, it will, certainly by 5 o'clock today, that recording should be available via our help center. So just watch out for your follow-up email. It'll include the links you need. Right, okay, let's get started with why do we set up users in the first place? Well, setting up users gives you the opportunity to basically give people access to the software, but it enables you to control which areas of the software that your colleagues can access. So, you know, if you want them to work on customers and maybe invoicing only, but you don't want them to have access to the banking area, you can do that. And it's very detailed, a very powerful feature within Sage 50 Cloud Accounts as to the level of detail you can go to on that one as well. And we'll see that in the demonstration in a moment. It'll also enables you to track a user's activity as well. So when they're entering transactions, it will actually assign their username to the actual transaction itself. So you know who's entered it. You'll know if someone's edited a transaction or entered an invoice, it would record that against that specific transaction. Obviously, you've got security benefits as well, helps you to control who can and can't get into the software. Obviously, you can set up passwords for the users as well. Linking in with Raymond's question that he's just popped in there, can another user use a different PC? If that PC has Sage installed and it's connected to the data, then yes, your users, the usernames and their passwords and the level of access, that's inbuilt into the data itself. So as long as you're connecting to the same set of data, when you go to log in, it will give them the relevant level of access. For a multi-user version, you do need to set up users so that more than one user can process simultaneously. You can't just all log in with the same logon. It won't allow you to do that. And also, if you're going to be using remote data access, it'll also be necessary to add users if you want to give people access to work from maybe different locations, not just within the office environment. Now, we do have a webinar next week. So again, Wednesday afternoons at 2, that's when we run the new topic each week. So if you want to come along and see more about remote data access and how you can, the benefits of that and how you go about setting it up, it's what used to be known as Sage Drive. Obviously, it's gone through a few improvements over the years. So if you want to come along and see more about that, then please get yourself signed up. Again, the link is included on your follow-up email. Now, how do we set up a user? So we'll run through this in a moment. We'll go into the software and quickly run through that one. So we're going to go into settings, user management, and users. Now, it's not all users that will be able to do that, and I'll explain that in more about that. Now, built into your software, you have, and you're probably aware of this one, a manager logon. So when you're prompted for the logon name, manager is built into the software. If you aren't aware of that one and you are in charge, then make sure you've put a password on it. Obviously, it helps to secure the system and it stops people logging in as manager and then, amending other people's access or even removing people's access. So make sure you've got that set up. You've got standard users, which you've always had available to you. So setting up your colleagues, choosing their specific access rights. And if you're on version 27 or version 28, you have 2 additional options now. And that's the ability to set up an accountant or a bookkeeper to flag them. Now, an accountant or bookkeeper must be using the Client Manager edition for their functionality. I'm not going to cover that in detail today. You can set their level of access, but so that they, within their accounting practice, can give maybe their colleagues access to the data, so they can set that up. They can only do that if they're on the Client Manager edition. Administrator gets the same level of access as manager with one restriction. If you're logged in as manager, you can remove an administrator, but as an administrator, you cannot remove the manager logon. So the manager logon's built in and will always be there. Let's have a look at it within the software though. As I say, it's quite a simple topic, this one. So I'll share my screen, get rid of Teams. That would probably help. So we're logged into Sage 50 Cloud Accounts Professional at the moment. Now it's going to be the same on all levels of Sage 50 Cloud. And I'm logged in as manager at the moment. Now I did mention about making sure that you've got your password set up. If you've got your password set, or maybe you take over the responsibility as the system administrator from someone else, once you're logged in as manager, you can go into settings, down to user management, and then you get an option to change your password. So it'll just ask you for your existing password, and then it's going to ask you what you want it to be, so what you want it to change it to be. That will go for your other users as well once you set them up. If they want to change their password, if they think might have been compromised and someone else has looked over their shoulder, or maybe they've shared it with people temporarily and they now want to change it, they can do that at any time. They just log in as themselves, settings, user management, change password, and they'll be able to do that. Now, as far as adding new users is concerned, it's only going to be the manager, and if you've got one set up, an administrator who is able to add and amend users. Prior to version 27, it was the manager logon only that was able to do that. So anyway, we're logged in as manager. We're going to pop into settings and we're going to come down to user management and click onto users. Now we're going to create, I'm going to create 3 new users. Maybe a few more if we've got a little bit of time. So we just click new. We choose the type of user that we want to set up. So let's get started with a standard user. So we click continue, give them a name. And do they require a password, or do you want to set them up without requiring a password at this stage. They can then set one up themselves if they want to, or you can set one up in advance. And you can also choose this little option here. So when they next log in, force them to change their password. So I'm just going to set that up in advance. Just make it nice and simple. Obviously, I would need to tell them what their username is. The username and the password is not case sensitive, by the way. So I'll set that up, click continue. Now at this stage, this is essentially the level of access, so the areas of the software that we can give them access to. And you've probably got two options at this stage. Initially, it's going to have nothing selected. So if I was just to continue and sort of save them at that point, they would be able to log in, but they wouldn't have actually any access to anything within the software other than the help option. So if you just want a user to read the help files only, then that's a way of doing that. And it's really, you've got two options when you first set them up. Do you start with no access and then start selecting the options that you want them to have access to? Or do you select everything, giving them access to everything within the software? They won't have access to be able to add, remove, or amend user access, but they will have access to just about everything else. So do you give them no access and enable the options, or do you give them access to everything and start taking away? It's really, that's a question for yourself. Which is the quickest? So what level of access do they need? Now I just clear that for the time being. Now some of the options will be linked. So for instance, if I give full access to customers, there'll be certain options within suppliers and bank accounts that it also gives them access to. So in bank accounts, for instance, if you have a look at that option, you can see because I've given them access to customers in full, it's also within the banking area because the option's available in both. It's given me access, or given that user access to the customer refund and the customer receipt option. Now you can beyond that as well. Within the individual ledgers, you'll see it's very, very detailed. You can go as in depth as you want at this stage. Maybe you think, right, well, I want to give them access to this area, but I don't want them to get involved with disputes. I don't want them to have access to price lists or credit charges or contras or the write-off refunds or returns options or comps. It's entirely up to you. Now, once you've set the level, and you'll probably find out if someone's not able to do something, they'll probably tell you about it. And you'll need to switch that option on. But if they've got access to something maybe they shouldn't have, they're probably less likely to tell you that one. So probably best to give them less access and then start enabling the options that are required than it is to give too much access. Anyway, once we've set the level of access for that user, we'll click continue. Now, remote data access, that's something we're covering in the webinar next week on Wednesday. So I'm not covering that in the session today. So I'll just click continue, click save, and that's them set up. Now it says here, level of access partial. And that's because I haven't just enabled everything within the software. If you've got someone that maybe they're taken over in the role, so taking over from Mac, for instance, we could highlight that. And rather than go through and try to set up the user from scratch, we can click copy. Just continue, enter the username, etc., and they'll have the same level of access. Now, one tip I would always give you is test it. How do you test it? Well, easy enough. All we need to do is go to File and Log Off. Log on as that user. And then you'll see what access we do have within the software. So customers, some options will be grayed out, but otherwise it will hide certain areas that I don't have access to when I'm logged in as that user. So test it. It's the easiest way to do that. Log in as that user. You don't need to get them to log in and watch over the shoulder. Just test it yourself. Just log in as them. You'll see that some of the options are missing from the top as well, like the tools menu and the settings menu, for instance. To switch back, I can either close out the software and when I next open it, log back in as, say, manager, or I can just go File, Log Off, just click yes to that prompt, and then I'm going to log back in as manager. And that's me back in. I've got full access to everything again. Now let's just go through that. And remember, you can go into settings, user management and users. We can highlight that user and we can edit them. Just go into level of access. And maybe we want them to get involved in the suppliers area at this stage, so we can switch that option on. You're going to see a number of symbols there. You can see a black dot in the box when it's partial access. So remember, in customers, when I expanded that, I removed the tick out of some of those options, so they don't have access to those. You'll see it where it's blank, meaning that they don't have access to that area at all. And you'll see a tick in the box as well where they've got full access. So as I say, you can always go in and change it. Just going to click finish at that point, save, and again, that updates it straight away. For them to see that option, I think off the top of my head, they will need, if they're already logged in, it doesn't just appear. I think it will check their access at the point of logging in. So, if they're working and they need access to something, just close, get them to log off, log back in, and it should pick up their new level of access. Now, while we're in here, we're just going to click new once more. We'll set up an accountant. So if your accountant or bookkeeper will be linking in via Client Manager, then we can set them up. So continue, just give it a name. Again, I'll pop a password in. And again, even with an accountant or a bookkeeper, we can determine what areas of the software we want them to have access to. So again, you can select all and then start removing options, or start from scratch and start enabling the options that you want them to have access to. Just click continue, save it, and again, that's it set up. Final option I want to quickly mention with regard to this, when we click new, is the administrator. So we select an administrator, click continue, we'll give them a name, let's put mine in this time. Now I'm going to tick the box there just to say I want them to change the password next time they log in, just so you can see what that looks like. So we click continue, ignore the remote data access option for the time being, click continue, click save, that's them set up. If I close and log off and log in as the new administrator, and again, you get the prompt because we ticked that box when we set the user up. So just okay that one. It'll ask me for whatever I want the new password to be. So I like to keep mine nice and simple, and that's me in. Now I have full access to the software at that point because I'm an administrator. So it's equivalent of manager, but if I do go into settings and then user management and users, so I can go in and I can amend users, amend their level of access, etc. So I can delete a user as well. One thing I can't do that I mentioned earlier was you can't delete the manager logon. That's built into your software. Now there's no restriction on the number of users that you set up. It does not relate to the number of user licenses that you have, just in case you're wondering about that. So if you've got let's say you've got a 2-user license, what that refers to, your user license, is the number of users that can log in consecutively and use the software at the same time. Or consecutively, simultaneously, I should say. So it means that 2 users then, but it could be in the background that I've got 10 users set up. It's just we work from 2 PCs. And that determines how many users can log in simultaneously. So set up as many users as you want. Now I'm just going to quickly log back in as manager. So again, I've got full access. And if we go back to settings, user management and users, and we can sort of change the level of a user at any point as well. So we got the user type of sort of standard, for instance, let's say Mac. Maybe he's worked his way up through the company and we want to promote him to be an administrator. We can edit the user and we can simply change it. And that now means as an administrator, Mac would have access to everything within the software itself. So nice and easy to work with your users and control what they can't have access to. Again, if you've got any questions for myself, Jackie, or who else has joined us today, or Tom, then please pop them into the questions panel. I've been quite quiet so far. I like you to keep them busy. So if you think of anything, pop it in there. Now, one thing to be aware of as well is that if you set up another user and they're going to be working from a different PC, they still need to install that software. It's still essentially, Sage 50 Cloud Accounts is still essentially desktop software, so they still need to have that installed. So if they're working within the office and you're connecting to data, they've got to have that software installed. Similarly, if you're using remote data access to access the data as well, we'll be covering that one in more detail next week on the session. They would still have to have the software installed. So let's say they're working from home at the moment. They'd still have to have the software installed. And when they go into it for the first time, they would then get an option to connect to data on remote data via remote data access, but they still need to have the software installed. So that's something to be aware of. If you need advice on installing the software, please check out the information that's available in our help center. We have a specifically, and we'll come on to that now, telling you a little bit about the help center. So specifically, there is an installation area within there, as you probably imagine. We get loads of questions on installation, whether it's a brand new installation, adding users, linking to a network or via remote data access. We get loads and loads of questions on installing the software. Now you can access the Help Center directly from within your software. You've got the navigation panel down the right-hand side. So towards the top, you've got the Help Center link, or you can just head along to sage.co.uk/help. Loads of information in there. There's thousands of articles. The first one, or the first key area there, is install your software. So if you need some advice in getting them up and running, that's where to head. As far as further learning for your software is concerned, obviously we introduce a new topic each week. So if you want to sort of develop your knowledge in little chunks, we try to keep them down to about half an hour, these extra sessions, followed by maybe a little bit of Q&A. But if you want to sort of develop your knowledge on these different areas, get yourself signed up for those. If you've missed any sessions, again, just watch out for your follow-up email, and includes a link to both the live webinar timetable and also our list of recordings. So you can either sign up for future sessions or catch up via the recordings. Recordings are generally made available the same day when we introduce a new topic. And there's also loads of free training courses available from within Sage University. The link to Sage University is also included in your follow-up email. Now we mentioned next week, 23rd of Feb, 2 o'clock, remote data access. So links in nicely with this one. We're then running chart of accounts. We've got that one tomorrow, followed by management reports the following week. All that topics are very popular as well. So if you haven't yet come along to any of those, please get yourself signed up. If you always worry when it comes to running your VAT return or anything like that, then come along. Jackie generally presents those ones. So really fantastic feedback we get on those sessions. Elaine, your question there. So just mentioned a bit confused. So I'll pick up your question in a moment, Elaine. I'll just try and clarify that one a little bit again, about the difference between manager and administrator. So I'll pick that one up in a moment. So if you are interested in attending the webinars, watch out for your follow-up email and get yourself registered. Sage University, as I mentioned, there's loads of courses in there, whether it's you want more information about getting started or the fundamentals of using accounts, day-to-day transactions, that type of thing. Or if you want to go through the certification route as well, loads of options on there. Links included on your follow-up email. Now, we're going to open up to questions at this stage. I'm going to quickly pick up on Elaine's question first of all. If you want to stick around, we're going to run this almost like a bonus, what I've termed the bonus feature. So we're going to take a quick look at, in the bank accounts area, at recurring items. So it can be a good time saver, that one. We'll quickly coming back to Elaine's question. So a bit confused, what's the main difference between manager and an administrator? Very little is the honest answer to that one. It used to be prior to version 27 that people would share the manager logon. So if anyone needed, so rather than every time you needed to amend someone's level of access or add a new user, you would have to log in as manager. And to avoid having to share the password for that one, we introduced the concept of this administrator logon. Now, administrator essentially has almost identical access as manager. Manager is built in, so you can't change the logon name itself of manager, but you can assign a password. Administrators, you can set them up as whatever name you want. So essentially, they're the same. Manager, you cannot remove that, whereas administrators can be deleted and amended. Other than that, they're virtually identical. Right, okay. Again, keep your questions coming for Jackie and Tom. Keep them busy. We're going to move on to what I've termed this week's bonus feature. So I want you to take about 5 minutes maybe to run through this. If you've not come across recurring items before, then it might be a good little time saver for you. So what is recurring items? Let's have a look at that one. So I'll just run through a quick, tell you a little bit about it, and then I'll run through a quick demonstration. If you want to try and follow that through at that point, you'd be more than welcome. So good time saver, first of all. So when you think of recurring items, particularly on the bank side, and that's what we're going to look at today, you do have recurring items in other areas such as invoices, for instance. But what we're going to look at today is recurring items from a bank perspective. And when you think about that, you'll probably initially think about things like standing orders, direct debits. So those transactions that happen on a regular basis that you'll probably each month sit there keying in. Now, instead of that, what you do is you set up a recurring item, and then rather than you sitting there keying them in manually each month, you've got them set up and you can just go in and say, right, I want to process those. So if you've got a direct debit, or you might have a number of direct debits that, let's say, go through on the first day of the month, you can set them up, and rather than sitting keying them in, you just go into the recurring items area and say, right, I want to process these, and it'll enter that into your software for you. You can even set up a reminder so that as they become due, when you log into the software, it'll just give you that bit of reminder to say they are due now, and it'll take you into that area. One thing to be aware of is if you use a bank feed, rather than set up a recurring item, it could be probably more beneficial to just set up a rule instead. So as transactions download via the bank feed, if your rule recognizes that transaction, then it can process it automatically for you. So what I want to quickly do, I'm just going to quickly run through a little demonstration. As I say, if you want to have a go of this yourself, you might even want to go within your demonstration data and have a go, then please do. But I'll share my screen. we'll close out of user management. Again, still keep your questions coming, whether it relates to what I'm talking about or what we've covered on the webinar previously. You're more than welcome. Just pop them in there. So to access recurring items, I'm going to pop into bank accounts. Doesn't matter which bank I select at this point, but on the toolbar, I've got a recurring items option. Now, all I do at this stage, I'm going to click add, and I'm going to set up a basic payment. Now, you can, first of all, choose your transaction type. So it could be equivalent of a bank payment, a bank receipt, transferring funds between accounts. You could do it as a customer payment on account. Maybe you've got supplier payment on account as well. Or you can set up a journal. Now what I'm going to do, because it's by far the most common, is I'm going to choose this first option. So bank cash credit card payment. Now the reason it says bank cash credit card payment is just in case you've got your, it will depend on your bank account type. But essentially it's where you've used the payment option. So I'll select that option. So bank payment. I'm going to say, right, the payment comes out of my current account. And I want that to go to, what should we choose? Let's say it's insurance. So I'll scroll down. Let's see if I can find an insurance account. I'll gone too quick now. It's one of those you can never see it when you're looking for it. You probably feel my pain there, I think, at times. So we'll choose that one. So vehicle insurance. So just like you're entering a normal bank payment, we've got the transaction type specified. Give it a transaction reference. Now, what I would encourage you to do is to change that reference. Don't just leave it set to the default of DD stroke STO or direct debit standing order. Give it a reference. I'll call it that. And give it some details as well. I can allocate it to a department. And then I need to choose the posting frequency. So I'm going to say I want this one to post every 1 month. So on a monthly basis. Obviously, by the combination of choosing the frequency there, you can just about set whatever frequency you want. If it's on a quarterly basis, you could say, right, I want to post that every 3 months, or every 2 weeks, every 5 days, every 12 months. So you're getting it then on an annual basis. So we just say it on a monthly basis. I can say, right, I'm paying this maybe over the next 10 months. So I want 10 payments. And I want this to start, I'm going to backdate that one. So I'm going to set that to begin on the 1st of Feb. So it calculates obviously the finish date. If I hadn't chosen this one and I just left it as it was, it would just say perpetual. So it would just keep on going until I either suspend it or come in and remove it. All I then need to do, pop in an amount. So let's say it's £50, and I'm going to set this one to T2. Obviously you can choose your options at the bottom, and I just set that up, click OK. Now at that point, it hasn't actually entered anything into my accounts just yet because I haven't processed it yet. And let me just close out of the software. I'm not 100% certain if I've got the option, the reminder switched on, but let's see if we do or not. So that's the company I want. So I'm now saying you've got recurring entries due. Remember, I set that to say it was due on the 1st of the month, so 1st of Feb. We're past that date, so it's going to come up and prompt me. So I'm going to say yes, I want to process them. So it takes me into the recurring items window. I can access this window as well if I just close out of that by going into the bank accounts area and going into recurring items and then choosing process. It will essentially do the same thing. Now, what it's going to do, it's going to look at the ones that haven't yet been processed that are due up to the date that you specify. So if I was to advance that date to say, let's say the 9th of March, and then just press the tab key, you'll see that it's now calculated that 2 of these payments should have been due. And this will essentially, when I click post, it will enter that transaction or the 2 transactions in this case, into my accounts. So I'll just click post, and that's them done. So it'll tell me what the next posting date is at that point. So if you've got your software open, literally just go into bank accounts and then see if you've got that recurring items option on the top, and just actually go into it. And if you've got it, well, if you have one, edit. I don't suppose you have at this point, but just click into add and you'll be able to see that screen. So it's a good way of those regular transactions. So if you've got a list of direct debits and standing orders that you manually key in each month or on a regular basis, set them up as recurring entries. And it will, again, will save you time. Now those 2 entries that we've just posted there, those 2 transactions, if I just pop into the transactions list, you can see, well, as you can see, I've not got much set up in this example, but you can see the 2 transactions have been posted. So potentially a good little time saver there for you, depending how many regular transactions you've got. So I hope you'll be able to make use of that one. Right, we are still available for questions. So if you do have any, keep them coming. Does bring us to the end of the demonstrations though that we planned, plus the little bonus feature. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you've got any requests for little bonus features that you'd maybe like us to try and incorporate into maybe some future webinars, let us know. Or bigger topics, let us know as well. There'll be an exit survey that pops up as you leave the session today. So what do you want to see covered going forward? Let us know. If you can take a minute to complete that, we really appreciate it. Now, as I've mentioned this a number of times, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about this one now. You will get the follow-up email in round about 1 hour's time. And hopefully by the time you get that, we'll have the recording of today's session available for you. So you can either register for future webinars or watch recordings via the links provided. And of course, the link to Sage University is included on there as well. Some fantastic content to help you get up to speed with features and processes within your software. Right, quick question from Debbie, which I'll pick up. Debbie's just asking there, can this be applied to supplier invoices as well? So Debbie, can I just ask from you there, are you referring to payments to suppliers that you're making, or do you mean the actual invoice itself? Just let me know. Again, just pop a quick comment in the questions panel, and I'll try and pick that up. Rachel, you mentioned there that you're now using bank feeds. I think it was just off the top of my head, I think it was just last week we ran a webinar on bank feeds. So let me know, or watch the recording, and that will explain how you go about setting up rules. So again, you get the link on the follow-up email. I think Jackie's just picking that up for you now as well. So you're mentioning there, Debbie, just it's the same amount every month to the supplier. Right, let's have a quick look at that one for you. So if you want to use a recurring item to pay your supplier, essentially, what you'll be able to do, if we go back into the bank accounts area, is recurring items. So I'll need to add that. and I can choose the option to post a payment to a supplier. Now, what this doesn't do, it doesn't allocate that payment to a specific invoice. It's not clever enough to be able to do that, this option. So to save you having to enter it manually, you can do that, and obviously it will show the payment against the relevant supplier. Let's see if I've got one I can demo that one on. Just be my luck, I've got no supplier set up. So I could choose my supplier and say, right, each month on this, let's say the 10th of the month, I want to show a payment being made to that supplier for X amount. So you can link it in that way. Similar if you've got money coming in from a customer. You can use it pretty much the same way. But it will, as I say, it will go through as a payment on account. Right, question starting dry. I didn't think it would be a question heavy session, this one, and I think I've been proved right on that one. So once again, I think we'll end the webinar just at that point. So once again, many thanks for coming along. Watch out for your follow-up email, and if you can take a minute to complete that survey, that'll be greatly appreciated. But otherwise, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some of our future webinars again. Many thanks.